Hello everyone, in this video we are going to continue to look at Hello everyone, and in this video we are going to continue to look at a future for the world. And in the Second American Civil War, Cuba is going to be fully liberated, and in Venezuela we are going to see a push that then leads to a spearhead up to here, which then leads to the full capitulation of this area, of whatever you call it, whatever. And over in California, there is going to be a push made in this Nevada area, I think, and also just kind of along this entire front. And then this big encirclement is gonna be pushed into, and then this encirclement is gonna eventually surrender over. And then a naval landing is made back in Miami, or Florida, which then allows for a push up into more of Florida, and a push over here by Louisiana is made to connect up through the Florida Panhandle, and they keep pushing up and around, and as well down right here. And then they push through this area, I think like Kansas and Nebraska, I think. And as well over here in like the Dakotas. And here, and then we see a push along the coast around the south, and it is successful, and eventually this area surrenders. And since there's not much like actually valuable land, we are going to see the end of this war and their surrender. And let's take a look at this peace treaty. Alright, and I have just remade this map. I did this last night. I made a map because this old one wasn't the best. And today I just adjusted the borders. So, as far for the peace treaty, as far as borders go, Panama gets the Panama Canal Zone back, and Denmark gets Greenland back. And Panama, Venezuela, and Cuba all get their original governments back. And the new U.S. government is going to create a new alliance known as the Anti-Imperialist Pact. And the countries that will be joining this will be Cuba, Venezuela, Panama, Kurdistan, Palestine, the new Egyptian government, and the Basque country. And this is what the new alliance layer looks like. And by the way, I changed the borders of Kurdistan quite a bit since yeah. So it's more geographical. And now Syria is going to join NATO. They are ready now, and it's definitely not because I forgot. And we are going to see a new war break out, and Republika Srpska has decided that they don't want to be in Bosnia anymore. So they are going to invade out like this, and then pretty soon they're gonna sign a peace treaty with Bosnia. And so let's take a look at this peace treaty. And we are going to see Republika Srpska gain their independence, and then pretty soon they are gonna join up with Serbia. And then pretty soon after this, we're going to see Serbia fully join the CSTO. And over in Africa, in Ethiopia, we see a new faction coming to power in the government. And this faction is kind of like really nationalistic and like crazy and stuff. And so they try to really put their influence into Djibouti, and then they decide to just shut off the Nile from Sudan and Egypt. And so Sudan and Egypt are like, what? You can't just do that. Yeah! And so they both declare war on Ethiopia, and then Ethiopia uses their influence over Djibouti to get them to join in their war. And before we see any actual fighting, and then we see Egypt and Sudan solve their dispute over the Halaib Triangle by just like splitting it up half like that. And so we see Egypt and Sudan push into Ethiopia. And then we see Somalia join in on the war over this area that they're invading into, which is disputed between Ethiopia and Somalia. And then we see Somaliland join up on this war, because Ethiopia is like, hey, we're at war with them, want to help us out and maybe get your independence recognized by more people? And they're like, sure. And so they join the war. And they begin invading into Somalia. And then we see Somalia convincing the rest of the East African Federation countries to join in on their war against Ethiopia. Hello? And so, after this, Eritrea is like, hey, we don't really like Ethiopia the most, and also, hey, free land, and so they also join in on the war. And with that, we see Somaliland being completely pushed out of Somalia, and then getting invaded into, even. And this war is gonna pretty much just be a complete destruction of Ethiopia, as they're even getting aid from the Anti-Imperialist Pact, since Egypt is in that. And then we see Djibouti and Somaliland completely capitulating over to the Egyptian Sudanese side. And then there's pretty much just a spearhead to the capital from all sides. And this forces their surrendering. So, let's take a look at this peace treaty. Alright, and so this is what Africa is looking like after this war. So, let's go over this. So obviously, every country that was at war with Ethiopia surrounding them got land, and Djibouti was left alone because they were their hand was kind of forced to join this war. And then this section of the East African Federation forms the East African Federation, and they form an alliance with the other East African Federation countries known as the African Defense Council. Now, I know this looks weird, but it's to give them more control over to give Sudan more control over the source of the Nile. And obviously that's what this war started over, so to help prevent this from happening again. Alright. And we are going to see Switzerland finally decide to fully break their neutrality and join NATO. And over here, we are going to see Iran join in the CSTO, as they want more protection if they get involved in another war, like what happened here. And over in West Africa, we are going to see a war breaking out. This is kind of caused by France and the AIP, which is what I'm going to call the Anti-Imperialist Pact. And they're just kind of like competing for influence in this area, and so that's going to cause a war. And the AIP is gonna launch an offensive kind of on the entire border, and launch an offensive over here to connect this all up, and then they're gonna push up into Burkina Faso and along this border. And yeah, they're just kind of pushing around the entire front. And then they're going to fully capture Burkina Faso, so they will surrender. And then they're gonna cut Mali in two. And I know there's kind of like a lot of chaos going on in this area, but we're just gonna kind of ignore that. They are going to surrender over. And then a similar thing is gonna happen over here. And eventually they are just gonna surrender. Alright, let's take a look at this peace treaty. And for the peace treaty, we see these three, the countries that were invaded, they get a new government installed that is pro AIP and African Defense Council, and then they will either join the AIP or the African Defense Council, and Nigeria and Ghana join the African Defense Council as well, and Liberia and Senegal? I don't remember which country this is, whichever this one is, joins the Anti-Imperialist Pact. And that is going to be it for this video. If you like this video, you should give it a like and check out my other videos, and if you like those ones, please consider subscribing. Alright, see you in the next video.